In today's video, I'm going to be talking about how we can enhance our body, give you some examples of people who have done so, and funny enough, how we can actually learn from them. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Aamir Hussain. I love to talk about research so much so I decided to make YouTube videos about it. And today marks a new weekday series called Content Corner, where I go through books that I've read, podcasts that I've listened to, videos and courses that I've been on, even articles that I've researched and read, and even people who I follow, and sharing lessons and advices from all of them in a little package video, bite-sized video for you to watch, enjoy, and even refer back to. It gives me a chance to share what's in here and put it over there so you guys can enjoy with some little humor in amongst said videos. So without further ado, I'm going to crack on with today's video, which is going to be about genes versus environment and how we can actually enhance our body by using the environment around us in the form of what we eat, what we drink, how we think, and how we can experiment on ourselves essentially to become more better individuals via physical capacity, mental capacity, via being able to sleep better, being able to do all sorts of things. But I'm going to give you some actual examples and some take-home messages for today. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. So before we go into the evidences and examples that people have used in order to enhance themselves by changing their environment, we need to sort of set the scene a bit in terms of what genes are in this context and how we can change our environment. Now, back in the olden days, there was a term by we are doomed by our genes for many of the preventable diseases that we have, and even how we are physically, how we are mentally. We thought, right, whatever DNA you have, that's it. You can't really change it. But as science has actually evolved and improved, and we're getting more and more kind of aware of what our bodies are capable of, in particular our genes, we know now that we have a big role to play, a very powerful role in changing the way our genes are expressed. So there are many genes that we have that are beneficial for us if they're in high levels. There are also many genes that are actually supposed to be very low in terms of expression. And when there's an imbalance, so when certain genes that we have that look after ourselves are diminished, there's a problem. And then where many genes that are in low levels but somehow get abnormally increased, there's also a problem. And large part of those is due to what changes we have in our environment. So the foods that we eat, what we drink, how we think, what we consume as media in terms of how it changes our brain and our thinking, that affects us, the amount of stress we sometimes go through. And all of that is pivotal in how we can change the way we are to benefit us. So why not use our environment to make it more beneficial for us as opposed to a harm? And now a lot of this might be very familiar to you already, but I'm a very big believer in reminder and also showing examples of how slight changes in what we eat, slight changes in our mentality and what we have, changes in what we see is important to us, can make a profound impact on how we are as individuals. Now, I broke today's episode down into changes in our diet and what that can do, changes in our fitness, in our kind of physical capabilities and what that can do, and even changes in our usage of our brain, so from a kind of like a learning point of view, and evidences of how that has skyrocketed when you start to focus in the right way. So without further ado, I'm going to go through these examples, show you what has been done, and then we're going to have some take-home messages towards the end. If that sounds like a plan, stay tuned and we shall start said examples. Now, the first example of enhancing our body through changes in our diet is using an example from tennis. Now, many of you know I am a massive tennis fan, someone I love to play and hope to meet the greatest players ever when COVID allows, potentially. And you see me doing that little tennis practice videos on Instagram. So if you don't see me on Instagram, if you are not following me on Instagram, please do so. It's right here. Look where my hand is. Should see it there. Yeah. And the reason why I'm using tennis as an example is currently the world number one, Novak Djokovic, wasn't always the greatest player when he started. He actually suffered from a lot of burnouts, exhaustions, issues with playing long matches. And even in hot climates, he would burn out and he wouldn't be able to continue. And many were saying that that was a big hindrance in his success. And because elite athletes really want to win, they really want to develop, I actually wrote a Medium article about this, about 7 habits from elite athletes, as you can see here. And one of was his meticulous attitude to diet after this realization. So again, remember, his genes haven't changed. He didn't take the miraculous drug that altered his body biochemistry and became superhuman. He realized that something was wrong with his current diet. It was affecting his performance at the elite level. So then he realized through his nutritionist, through his sports psychologist and physiologist, alright, something is impairing my ability to continue at this very prolonged high level. So he started to look at issues that were affecting him, that were causing potential inflammation, that were causing kind of, you can say, friction in his internal kind of biochemistry, that there were foods that he was eating that weren't going well. And then he adopted a more very strict diet. I believe predominantly plant-based. There was no grains, no kind of sugar, even to the point where he wouldn't drink any form of liquids with ice. And you can see here the excerpt that I got from my article where he realized that when you drink anything with ice, that part of the body, so that your stomach and your kind of small intestines, require more blood to be pumped there because to heat up that area, so it's more optimal. And although that's really good for burning calories, he argued that the blood is now being diverted away from my muscles. So in terms of recovery, in terms of performance as well, the blood is not going where it's supposed to. So he was that meticulous by his diet. And he actually attributes one of the key performances of his change in himself. So again, going to the notion of enhancing yourself by changing your environment, he changed very key parts of his diet. Now, I know this is at the elite level, but there's still many lessons that we can learn from. Why not experiment on ourselves to see that can we improve our focus? Can we improve our longevity during the day? When we have exhaustions or food comas or kind of cloggy thoughts, is it potentially due to something in our diet? What is the harm in actually having a look? So that's an example from a diet point of view. But why don't we go into a fitness point of view? Now, again, this is another sports example. And again, if you are watching and you don't really enjoy sports, I'm sorry. But these examples are actually really useful and it's something I've learned from to become a better individual myself. Now, coming from a fitness point of view, Cristiano Ronaldo is somebody everybody knows, even if you don't like football or soccer, if you're watching from the other part of the world. And I'm very fascinated with him in particular because of not of how many goals he scored and how successful he is, but more how he changed the way elite athletes look after themselves. So for example, if you look at him when he was very early on, he may have had genes that made him more kind of favourable for being what many people argue as one of the greatest, if not the most complete elite athlete in terms of physical capabilities. But it was his intense change in his environment that allowed him to, one, excel above everybody else, two, consistently stay there, and now three, at an age where many people retire, he is still performing at the elite level. Now, he, from an intense point of view, I mean a consistently intense point of view, changed his environment to aid his physical capabilities. Now, what I mean by that is, when he first went to the Premier League team, Manchester United, many of his teammates at the time said he revolutionized the way elite athletes look after themselves because he himself, as an elite athlete, came with his own nutritionist, his own sports psychologist, his own sports physiologist, his own personal trainer, his own kind of planner. He had a team, an entourage that were constantly looking after him to change his physical capabilities. Every day that he trains, he would be the hardest worker. He would have regimes in place to change his routines. He would have things in place in his home, in his, even the first one there, the last one to, take free kicks and stuff like that. He would constantly change his fitness capabilities. Now, what I mean by that is he was constantly training more than anybody else and in a way that was optimal for him. Yes, and I will firstly be the first to admit, he may have had genes that are more favorable for him to run faster, to be more alert, to potentially have more muscle mass and be lean. But if you ask many of the football players and many of the people who have studied him, they will say he is one of the hardest, if not the hardest worker in football. Now that is attributed to what? He didn't change his genes. He didn't have any mutations again. What did he do? He consistently and in an intense period, for many years now, changed his environment. He looked at the way he exercised and he used that as a way to enhance himself. So what's stopping us again? Yes, that was at the elite level, but what's stopping us doing something of that similar nature to enhance ourselves? As you saw a few weeks ago, I did my DNA Fit series on my fitness type, and it showed I was more kind of favorable to this type of exercise regime and this. I didn't realize I had a better aerobic capacity. I had a tendency to potentially build more muscle mass. So yes, my genetic favorability is there, but it can only be unlocked if I do what? If I design and exercise and train in a way that is suited to that. Consistency, hard working, changing my environment. And because of that, I can then adopt and make use of the genetic kind of favorabilities I have. And let's use this example to understand there are many people, unfortunately, who eat whatever they want and they won't get any conditions. Like, for example, diabetes. They eat many sugary foods and don't have any issues. There are some people who may have binged for a month or two and they're now pre-diabetic. That is obviously an unfortunate case and very common case. However, there are ways that we can change our environment to at least minimize and if not counteract that potential issue. And something I'm going to go on towards the end of the video. But that's something to bear in mind, that just because we may have a genetic predisposition to be more likely for something, whether it's good, as I mentioned already in two examples, or bad, there are things in our environment that we can do to kind of prevent that potentially, counteract it, combat it. So then we're not being saying, oh, we're doomed for our genes. My parents had diabetes, my sister had diabetes, my brother had diabetes, right, I'm going to get it. It's not always the case. And there's many studies that I'm going to put in the description box to give you an idea that that is not the case. But in terms of fitness, physical kind of capabilities and physical exercise can have a profound impact in the way you become enhanced as an individual, but it has to be suited to how you are. And that can only occur if you do what? If you experiment on yourselves. See what works better, see what doesn't. See what makes you feel better, see what doesn't. See what makes you improve and see what doesn't. It's all about experimenting. This is why I mentioned all of my intros is I am obsessed. I love to talk about research. Why? Because it can be so applicable and so useful for anybody, even if you're not a researcher yourselves. But let's move on to the third example. Now you're probably wondering, what about enhancing ourselves from a cognitive point of view? Can we become smarter without using any drugs? Can we absorb more memory? Can we, think quicker, think faster, become more alert? And the answer is yes. The very famous person, which I think a lot of people know, is Jim Quick. I have his book here. I'll put it in the description box as well. I'm actually reading very slowly, but reading through. And he literally explains how we all have the capabilities to become more enhanced by using certain techniques. And those techniques are what? Changing your environment, how you think. I mentioned at the start of the video, what you eat, what you drink, but also how you think, how you absorb information. Sometimes it's not what you do, is how you do it. And then you can actually increase the expression of certain genes that allow you to become more cognitively alert, allow you to potentially absorb more information than you thought was possible. You didn't change the genes. You didn't cause a mutation. You change the expression of the genes by what? Potentially thinking in a different way, using certain exercises and practices to do so. And Jim Quick has coached some phenomenal people around the world for many years on that exact notion of somebody's at this state, through exercises, coaching, that person now become potentially more smarter, more alert. They have the potential clearly, but they might have not been training and learning and thinking in the correct way that is beneficial for them. And even using myself as an example, now when I was going through my undergraduate, I devised strategies that were beneficial for me. Why? Because I know I enjoy listening. So I used to record things and I used to listen to. And then it helped me to do really well in exams. It helped me to think quicker, think smarter, absorb more large amounts of information. Now, to somebody else, oh, you're really smart. But I didn't change my genes. I just changed the environment that was more suited for me. Now, a lot of people potentially mention that, oh, I'm not smart or I can't do this. But majority of the times, they may be doing it in a way that's unfavorable for them. And if we were to adopt different measures, it will actually be beneficial for them. And I've seen this when I've been teaching students, when I've been mentoring students. They have a lot of this, oh yeah, that makes sense now. Yeah, I get that. And all I did was explain things in a different way. There was the same information. And that's how I'm so passionate about helping people to unlock their potential. A quote that's mentioned in my PhD thesis many years ago: we all have a potential that far exceeds what our minds can imagine. What we lack is the belief that we have it and the desire to utilize it. The potential is there within many of our genes for a large majority of us. But we can't unlock that potential because we don't set our environment in a way that we can make use of it. We can optimize it, we can enhance it. We don't do that enough because we're not self-aware, we don't experiment on ourselves enough. There are certain foods that you may or may not eat that could be more harmful for you, but also could be more beneficial for you. There's ways of learning, the way you set up your day, the way you do your tasks. A lot of them can change, i.e. changing your environment to benefit you. I think that's something that we all should take examples of. And these examples I've given in the 3 aspects give you a massive extreme example of what is potentially capable. But we can still derive those lessons and those practices to help our everyday life. Like when I was training before COVID, I was getting stronger, getting faster, getting more agile. Because I was doing training that was more optimized for me. And even when I was going through my PhD, going through many examples, I learned to adopt and change my environment to benefit me to become more of an enhanced individual. And I think that is something I want to remind myself first and foremost, but also remind all of you that there are many things you can change from the way you eat, from what you drink, from how you think. And in a favorable way, you can actually become a more enhanced individual than you ever thought possible. Do you think Ronaldo, people like Jim Craig, people like Novak Djokovic, they may have believed, but can you look at them from a body point of view? They went from X, they are now Y. And one of the biggest reasons for that massive transformation is what? It's a change, an extreme change, but a change in their environment. And that's something we all have the capacity and potential to do so. So I hope that was beneficial. So everybody, that was the first installment of Content Corner. Again, a little nugget series during the weekdays where I can share some advice from books that I've watched, books that I've read, videos that I've watched, podcasts that I've listened to, and various other forms in a way that you guys can benefit and enjoy. And I hope that was beneficial, that kind of motivates you to experiment on yourselves, to see how you can become an even better individual without doing too much in terms of changes. And if you enjoyed this series, if you want me to do more, if you want more topics that you are interested in, do let me know in the comments. Do hit me up on Instagram or email me at Aamir@researchtribe.org. And I would love to do this every Thursday, which is my plan, and then the more PhD research series on the weekend. So without further ado, I shall leave you to it. But if you can, just before you go, if you don't mind, we are on 92 subscribers as I record this video. It would be pretty awesome to get to 100, and then maybe like 000 after that. But for now, we'll just get to 100 if we can. So if you don't mind supporting the channel, that would be super helpful, and it'll help me to make more of these videos, which I hope you find beneficial. So without further ado, I shall leave you to your evening, and I'll catch you on Sunday for another installment of PhD 101. Take care.